Hello, pnawn da, pawb y croeso cyn y siam, eich i gyd, cynhordd Charlie McCurvey, dwi. Can I welcome everyone to today's meeting, which is a hybrid meeting. The meeting will be live streamed and recorded and will be available for viewing after the meeting. Should the live streaming fail, the meeting will continue and a recording will be available through the Council's website following the conclusion of the meeting. Can I remind members that translation facilities are available and for those attending on Zoom to choose the language of your choice. For those wishing to speak in the chamber, please raise your hand. For those on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. We will alternate between speakers in the chamber and on Zoom. For those attending remotely, please note that those in the chamber will be unable to use the chat facility. Committee members who are attending remotely are required to leave their cameras on throughout the debate and when voting in order to maintain the integrity of the decision-making process. If you do need to leave the meeting temporarily, pop a message in the chat function so the Democratic Services Officer is aware, and then let us know when you return. I expect everyone present and participating in this meeting to conduct themselves appropriately and be respectful to each other. That applies to members, officers, and anyone in the public gallery. Okay, so we'll move on to the first agenda item, which is apologies for absence.
Okay, one apology received from Amanda Hughes, Strategic Director for Finance and Resources.
Okay, Diolch, Sian. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest, code of local government. Members are reminded they must declare their existence and nature of their declared personal interest. Would any members like to declare an interest? No. Agenda item 3 is urgent matters. I'm not aware that we have any. Pushkin.
Well, working for the council, I should declare interest on any of the DC reports about employment and.
I think that's a no, Councillor Cromley.
No, Councillor Cromley, you should be okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, members, so we'll move on to agenda item 4, which is minutes of the cabinet. So it's to approve and sign as a correct record the minutes of the previous meeting. You'll find those on pages 4 to 16. So members, any issues arising from those minutes? If not, could I have somebody propose to accept them? Julie, okay, Julie, thank you. Can we have a vote to say we're happy with the minutes, please, members? Okay, agenda item 5 is announcements for the leader. I don't have any at this moment in time. Agenda item 6, announcements for the chief executive.
None for me today, Leader.
Okay, agenda item 7 is to review the cabinet forward work programme. You'll find that members on pages 17 to 48. Members, anything they want to raise about the forward work? Anything? No, can we show they're happy to accept it, please? Okay, so we'll move on to the first substantive item, which sits in the culture and leisure portfolio, museum service access policy and documentation policy. You'll find that on pages 49 to 79. Conhorad, Aaron, over to you.
Reit, na well. Di pawb yn gallu clywed fi? Cyfieithydd yn gweithio? Champion. Reit, dyma adroddiad ar ddwy ddogfen bwysig i'r gwasanaeth amgueddfeydd, sef y polisi mynediad a'r polisi dogfennaeth. Creuwyd gwasanaeth amgueddfeydd Conwy 1996. Fyddwch chi'n falch o glywed yr un flwyddyn yn gallu ngeni. Creuwyd y gwasanaeth i warchod treftadaeth Sir Conwy a'i phobl. Mae'r gwasanaeth amgueddfeydd yn darparu cyngor a chymorth proffesiynol i amganfeydd annibynnol yng Nghonwy yn ogystal â gofalu am gasgliad treftadaeth y cyngor. Mae polisi mynediad y gwasanaeth yn manylu ar sut y byddwn nhw'n sicrhau mynediad hygyrch a gynhwysol at gasgliadau'r amgueddfa, yn unol â gofynion cyfreithiol ac arferion gorau y sector. Mae cymrydwyo polisi mynediad yn un o ofynion allweddol y cynllun achredu amgueddfeydd. Mae polisi dogfennaeth y gwasanaeth yn nodi sut y byddwn yn cynnal safonau proffesiynol o ran dogfennu a sicrhau diogelwch y casgliad. Mae'r cynllun achredu amgueddfeydd yn gosod safonau gofynol arnom, gofynion sydd wedi'w gosod yn genedlaethol. Mae cyflawni achrediad yn fincnod pwysig o ran gofalu am gasgliad hanesyddol. Bydd y gwasanaeth amgueddfeydd felly yn cyflwyno ei ffurflen achredu gyntaf ym mis Ebrill flwyddyn yma. Mae'r achrediad yn flaenoriaeth i ni fel awdurdod, gamai dyna y gytunwyd arni pan gychwynnon ni ar y prosiect o sefydlu'r ganolfan ddiwylliant. Mae'r achrediad yn caniatáu i'r gasgliadau gael eu storio a'i harddangos o fewn safonau cenedlaethol am y tro cyntaf. Gai cymryd y cyfle felly i ddiolch yn arbennig i Rachel Evans, ein swyddog datblygu ac achredu, a Helen Goddard, pennaeth adran diwylliant, llyfgelloedd a gwybodaeth am ei gwaith yn paratoi y dogfennau hyn ar ein cyfer ni. Mae'r argymellion i'w canfod ar tudalen 50, sef bod y Cabinet yn cymeradwyo y polisi mynediad a'r polisi dogfennaeth, a dwi'n hapus i gynnig yn bod ni'n derbyn nhw. Hapus i ateb unrhyw gwestiwn. Diolch.
Okay, diolch Cynhyryd Liz, and then Gromley.
I'd like to second a proposal, please. I think that the service offers an excellent service, no matter what, any time you go into the culture centre, they're always there willing to help and support, and to help people who are asking questions about their culture, about their community. And I'm just totally amazed each time I go in how supportive they are. So I would just like to support it, please.
Okay, that's great to hear. Councillor Gromley.
Diolch Cadeirydd, diolch arweinydd, hapus iawn i gymrydwyo'r adroddiad gan Aron o swyddogion. Mae'n adroddiad cynhwysfawr iawn ac yn hapus iawn i gymrydwyo fel mae wedi cael ein barod gen cynghorydd Liz. A ni'n ysgrifennu bod Aron o'r rieni yn yr unig flwyddyn y gath y sir i geni dol yn 96. Mae'n hapus i eilio'r eilydd.
A true Conway baby.
Okay, members, anyone else like to comment? I think it's important we preserve all relics, Gromley, for the youth who are coming after us. But it is, in fairness, an excellent piece of work and something we should all be very proud of it. So just to be clear, it's option 4.1 that you're moving. We're not suggesting any alterations. Okay, so members, if we've had a proposer and a seconder, can all show the for in favour of that option. Fantastic. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 9, which sits within the education portfolio. First part is a consultation outcome proposal for relocation of the foundation behaviour resource. Canolfan Ystod Conwy a Drag Coch, and that's pages 80 to 103. So, Councillor Julie.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, so this came through Cabinet on the 11th of October, where we gave permission for the consultation to take place. So I don't intend to go into a great deal of detail here. Consultation took place between the 5th of December and 27th of January. For which we had 8 respondents and there were no objections received to the relocation of the Canolfan Addysg Conwy a Draig Goch. Feedback has been positive. We've heard from Paediatric Services, which you'll see in the report, but to draw your attention to what I think is probably the most important feedback on page 83, which is that of the learners themselves. I'm really happy foundation phase is coming to my school. I've made really good friends with some of the class. I'm happy to stay. I like it, and I love coming here to school. It's the best, I think, is probably one of the most positive comments there, and I think that's really powerful to hear from the learners themselves. So with that positive response to the consultation, Leader, I would take you to the recommendations at the top of page 81, which is that Cabinet approved the foundation phase resource for behaviour is relocated to Canolfan Addysg a Draig Goch. I'm proposing that. Thank you.
Okay, Julie Yolk. Members, any comments or observations? No. In that case, I'm more than happy to second the recommendation. Members, can we show we're in favour, please? Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the second part, which is still within Education Department, Sustainable Communities for Learning Programme. You'll find that on pages 104 to 118. So back to you, Julie.
Thank you, Leader. So this is to update on the Sustainable Communities for Learning programme and to obtain approval for the recommended priority project scoring matrix, the PPSM. The matrix will form one part of the methodology to look at the revised draft strategic outline plan, the SOP. The draft strategic outline plan will detail Conway County Borough Council's proposal for Sustainable Communities for Learning Educational Establishment Development Programme, and the completed draft strategic outline programme will then be presented to scrutiny and then come back to Cabinet in the summertime so that we can look at that. So we're all aware in terms of where we're at currently. This has been many years in the making in terms of what was the 21st Century Schools programme, and we identified areas, and if I take you to page 112, hang on a second. So here you can see a little bit of the background in terms of how we've come to where we are today. So in August 2017 we gave approval for the programme in terms of the 21st Century School programme, and there were areas, 9 areas that formed part of that SOP, and they were Abergele, Dyganwy, Dwygyfylchi, Goga, Llandalas, Llanfyfechan, Town and Kemmel Bay, Llandrillo and Rhos, and the pupil referral unit. Over time, we've seen COVID, Brexit, obviously the war in Ukraine, cost of living crisis and increased fuel costs, massive increase in construction and labour costs, and then some pressure in terms of the reduction of carbon and external pressures that we've seen as well. So due to those factors, we find ourselves in a position now where we're having to stop and reflect and look at what we can provide moving forward. So today what we have in front of you is the matrix, scoring matrix, to allow us to look at the factual information, to score those areas that I mentioned before, and to work out a plan as to what we do moving forward and where our priorities lay. And I think John must have joined us online, and I know Laurie's there. So if anyone's got any technical questions around this, but I think this is very fair, it's completely impartial, and it's driven by the data. So that will then come back again to us to have opportunity to look at the scoring, and like I said, look at the revised draft SOP in the summer. So I would take you to the recommendations, which is that today Cabinet approved the recommended priority project scoring matrix, and I'm happy to propose that, Leader, unless anybody's got any questions around the specific questions that were in the matrix. But like I said, that will form part of it, and it will come back for us to have the opportunity to look at that and set our priorities accordingly. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, Diolch, Julie. I'll open her up to any questions or observations. Anybody? Councillor Penny.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you. I just wonder if we could have a very brief overview of the scoring methodology and to see that it's fair to all the schools in the areas that are going to be put forward or not put forward. I don't know if John could answer that, or you, Julie. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously that's in the questions that's there. I mean, I can ask John to come in and explain it to you in a little bit more detail. Some of these are fairly technical, so oh, right. Okay.
Okay, Laurie.
Hi, thank you, Leader. John and I are in Clwyd Pella, so John is here with me. The owl is still trying to search for him in the room, but if he begins to talk, I'll try and sort the owl out.
Afternoon, everyone.
Hi, John.
Laurie, you've actually muted in that process, so.
Afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, John. Thanks.
Oh, good. Sorry, Laurie's just trying to catch and sort the owl out as we speak. just to give you basically a broad overview, the scoring criteria itself is based very much on data and statistical information that we hold centrally. This is information on all our schools, including the Prue. We will also be reviewing the estimated financial project costs with ourselves, with our central accountants and Welsh Government. And on top of that, we'll also be looking and discussing the matter with our school strategic planning group moving forward. So having an operational and curriculum steer on things as well. So it will be a very good broad overview of each area and each school. And it's about, I think it's about as fair as we could make it. I think it's a good accumulation of evidence moving forward to provide Cabinet with an information pack to make that decision.
Okay, Penny, any other further questions or observations, members? Councillor Gromley.
Just, having bared the scar of previous reviews of education provision, I am conscious of the fact that this can be quite a divisive process if we're not careful. So it's important, I think, that we do keep it open, transparent, because once, parents and future parents will be looking very closely at the provision for young people in the future. So I think it is one that we need to be very very sympathetic to the views of our communities when we look at the future of our schools going forward.
Okay, completely agree, Gromley. Hey, members, any other comments or observations? No? Councillor Penny, do you want to come back in again?
So, taking up Councillor Gromway's point, if it's will the community have much of a say with the schools, because it's data driven, that's held centrally, that's been provided by schools. So I'm guessing it's going to be data driven more than community engagement. Is that correct?
Yeah, happy to come back in on that, leader. Yes, it needs to be data. I think that's the fair way forward, is that then it means that everybody's judged on exactly the same merit. So yeah, I'm satisfied that that's the case, and obviously going forward there will be a way that we'll communicate this information as soon as we possibly can. We sent out a letter to those 9 areas just to notify them of the process that we're going through, and we'll continue to keep them updated through the process. But yeah,
Thank you.
thanks, leader.
Okay, Penny, I mean, we are the start of a process. Clearly, we would like to deliver the schools in all the 9 areas that were previously identified, but as Julie highlighted, the cost in building in particular are 30–40% higher where they were, and we've got the same funding envelope. So it'll be really challenging to come to a position. We know some schools have not maybe done as much maintenance because they thought they were moving, so there'll be a challenge there to address that. But it is a process. I think it's very comprehensive. But that will only be one part of the decision-making process. It needs to come back through and be considered in the round. So if there's no more comments, member Jenny, Julie, you've proposed, I'm happy to second it. So can we show we're in favour, please, members? Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on to the third part, which is still with the education section. Canalvan, as the Conway Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 funding. You'll find that on pages 119 to 144. Back to you again, Julie.
Thank you, leader. So again, this is something that has been ongoing for some time. We found ourselves in a position, those of us who've been here a while, a few years ago, where we had a school that pulled out of the service level agreement for the provision at Key Stage 3 and 4 of the pupil referral unit, and we felt that it was important that we worked at a plan to make sure that service was sustainable. So we've had consultation. We had a wider consultation on the provision initially, and all the SLAs we had, and then we've continued with this specifically around Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4. So this report provides the outcomes following that consultation on the funding arrangements at the pupil referral unit provision at Canalvan Addis Conway. The long-term funding arrangements have previously been consulted on, as I said, with the additional learning needs and social inclusion consultation. There are two options being presented today, and those have been consulted on with the secondary head teachers and the Canolfan Addis Conway staff. And this has resulted in a preference of option 1 by Canolfan Addis Conway staff and option 2 by Conway secondary schools. So in terms of what those options are, option 1 is a withdrawal of delegation with effect from the 1st of April 2024, and funding to be retained centrally by the local authority and services provided on a need-led basis. Option 2 is a service level agreement option, remains in place for Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4, with a portion centrally retained for those that opt not to buy in. Schools would have the option of opting in fully with the full amount delegated, or opting out with the return of a percentage of delegated amount. And this option would be in place on a 3-year basis, with schools committing to opt in or out at the end of that 3-year duration. The changes in option 2 gives us an improved position to where we're at now, because we go from a 2-year SLA to a 3-year SLA. And like I said, we'll be retaining some of that money centrally to provide a provision, which actually equates to 7 learners at Key Stage 3 and 7 learners at Key Stage 4. So if all schools pulled out, that would mean that we had that basic provision or core provision that we could provide. We also, as part of this, will have the opportunity to monitor those schools that do choose to opt out, using the ESTIN framework to ensure that that provision is appropriate. And moving forward, if we find that after the 3 years, or towards the end of the 3 years, that that provision isn't appropriate, then we could, as a local authority, ask them to return into the SLA. So it's been a tough one for me, because I pushed for this to take place, really, because I wanted to ensure that the service was protected. I think probably where we find ourselves now is we've had the secondary head teachers all support option 2. It's gone through scrutiny. We had a really thorough discussion there on scrutiny supported option 2, supporting the approach that head teachers wanted to take. So it's very much about a partnership, then giving us the opportunity to work closely with schools to ensure that the provision is the most appropriate provision, and to look at maybe some way forward that finds that schools do some, and perhaps the PRU at some point will find a kind of a different balance, perhaps over this period of time. I want to thank everybody involved in this. Gwyn was here at the education scrutiny, the head teacher of the PRU provision, and spoke passionately about the support that they provide for young people, and they did incredibly well with their ESTIN inspection last year as well. So, all credit to that service. And I think over time, as that continues to grow and improve, I would imagine at the end of this 3-year process that we'll see all of our schools opting into that service. But for today, I think we'll listen to the feedback of our head teachers, to the feedback that we've had from scrutiny, and that I would propose option 2, leader, that we support the option 2. In fact, let me go back to it so I read exactly what it says. So the Cabinet agreed to a long-term funding proposal for Canolfan Addis Conway Key Stages 3 and 4. And the option 2, the service level agreement option, remains in place for Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4, with a portion centrally retained for those that opt not to buy in. Schools would have the option of opting in fully and with the full amount delegated, or opting out with the return of a percentage of delegated amount. This option would be in place on a 3-year basis, with schools committing to opt in or opt out for the duration of the 3 years. So we won't find ourselves in a situation like we have before, leader, where partway through schools have opted out. This is once you sign up to that 3 years, that's the way that process will work. Equally, for those who choose to opt out, it will be down to them to provide provision. And even if that provision grows, that demand grows, that will be down to that school to meet that demand over that time. So but yeah, I'm satisfied that option 2 is the way we go today, and then over time we keep a close eye on that, leader. Thank you.
Okay, Julie, thank you for taking us through that. It's quite a complex issue. Members, any questions or observations? Hey, members, No other comments, so we will go with option 2. That gives us 3-year security, and then we can look to see whether option 1 on the long term provides that bit more stability. But there was also a request, I think, from scrutiny for a report to provide in 18 months' time. Julie, I take it we're quite happy with that.
Yeah, sorry, Leader, I forgot to add that in. Yeah, more than happy for that to come forward, and I know that Lowry's happy that we do that in 18 months' time. Just give an update as to where we are in terms of progress. Obviously, we talk about 3 years, but that doesn't start until April 2024. So I'd say that would be 18 months after this has started. So it would actually be midway through 25 that would bring the update.
Yeah, a bit of a halfway review as to where
Yeah.
we're up to.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
we've had a proposer and the second there, members, can we show for in favour of accepting the recommendation? Wonderful. So we'll move on to agenda item 10, which sits within the democracy and governance portfolio. It's the corporate plan 2022 to 27 mid-year performance report, and you'll find that on pages 145 to 187. Councillor Chris will take us through this.
Thank you, Leader. Well, this report is the first progress report for our new corporate plan, which we adopted last year. It's a 5-year plan. The key highlights are noted in section 3, and in detail, each action has the simple traffic light notation that we're used to and we like. This has been selected by the action owner so we can see whether we are on track and how we're performing against our targets. So before I go into look at each of the 9 long-term citizen outcomes, I'd just like to say that we are still seeing the impacts of the pandemic period. We know we're in a period of serious financial challenge. Councillor Mike sitting to my left here, who's been reporting to Cabinet a lot recently on that. Cost of living crisis, high inflation, interest rates, and the problems in the recruitment world. Can I just say that continued support for staff wellbeing remains a priority for us. So if we look at each of the 9 long-term citizen outcomes, and I'll be brief because I know that perhaps individual Cabinet members may want to come in with highlighting certain things. If we look at the first one, which is people in Conway value and look after the environment, we know we've got a clear plan and route map for our carbon net zero target. We're still on track to achieve the continuing 70% recycling rate target, which I think we can be really proud of. We've just secured 18 million from the UK Levelling Up Fund to improve active travel infrastructure and flood resilience. We look at the second outcome, which is people in Conway lived in a county which has a prosperous economy with culture at its heart. We've just finalised the Llandudno 10-year regeneration plan. We've launched a Visit Conway this winter campaign and secured more than £391,000 of external arts and heritage functions. So that's good news. Outcome 3 is people in Conway are educated and skilled. Well, we're implementing the new All Wales curriculum. And we've got, just looking at something specific, we've targeted support program for those not in education, NEETs they're called, aren't they, Julie? And we continue to work on that. And we have also introduced the latest technology in our schools as part of a wide-ranging digital strategy. Looking at number 4, people in Conway have access to affordable, appropriate, good quality accommodation that enhance the quality of their lives. We've supported 447 homeless young people through our Oak Tree programme. That's something quite specific they just wanted to pick out. Going on to people in Conway are safe and feel safe. Councillor Aaron in past Cabinet meetings has pointed out that we've made all 10 libraries safe places. We've got a cyber resilience strategy and our corporate safeguarding policy is updated and has been effected quite efficiently so far. So that's important. Then we go on to people in Conway are healthy. We've got the Croeso Cynnes Warm Welcome Programme, which our family centres and libraries have been involved in. We retain our dementia-friendly status, and we've recruited an extra 5 dementia support workers. We've been future-proofing our leisure centres, and we've got our highest ever membership for Fit Conwy, which I believe stands at over 4,200. Is that right? Yeah. Looking at the outcome 7, people in Conwy live in a county where the use of Welsh is thriving, and people can participate in all aspects of community life through the medium of Welsh. In-house, we've got 36 staff and 9 councillors who are taking part in our Work Welsh scheme. And we're always talking about learners, but it's interesting that there's been a new course designed to develop Welsh written skills, that's really aimed at fluent Welsh speakers, and that leader is fully booked. So it shows the support for that. Looking at number 8, people in Conwy are informed, included, listened to, and can actively contribute to a community where their background and identity are valued and respected. There are those place-making plans with town councils that we've got, and we've started on our anti-racist Wales action plan. I had a meeting with the minister recently, and she wants this to be a priority, and work is substantially going on with that. I'm looking at Josh and Tracy over there in the corner. The last one, Conwy Council is resilient. Well, we know that we've got a work-wise framework which encompasses our hybrid working module, and our aim is to ensure that this benefits our customers and that we don't lose face-to-face provision. I know many councillors are concerned about that, and I want to give assurances in that area. Regarding social care, we developed a management trainee pathway, which I welcome. So we know we've got to continue to focus on certain areas, and on page 151, we list 20 areas which we will continue to sort of forward actions going into the next year. Social care sectors, we know that sustainability is very important. In housing, we know we've got to implement the new housing programme and concentrate on providing affordable housing and coping with the homelessness challenges. So the report, it's quite a lengthy report, but I think you will agree it evidences the commitment and the talent of our staff to make a difference to all the diverse communities we serve. And I'm sure that we can continue to do this even in challenging financial times. We know we're in a world of cuts, and we cannot expect to deliver more for less. The service performance reviews have just taken place, and details coming from these start on page 160. So we need to keep the corporate risk register updated. We need to review target setting. And of course, we've already started the work on our next budget. So the recommendations are on page 146 at 2.2. And that, if I could move, that Cabinet approves the report and acknowledges that this first period of self-assessment has shown that good progress has been made in delivering the 5-year corporate plan 2022-2027, that we are delivering on our well-being objectives. So I move that, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Chris, for taking us through that. Gromwy and then Mike.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Chris. Just one question, or a couple of questions on resilience on page 153. I know there's been quite a bit of discussion around our ability to fill vacancies and our recruitment progress. We discussed this in open spaces planning meeting last Friday, and from what I understand, the application form has been simplified, but it still runs to around 10 pages from what I understand. Are we confident that our application process is as easy to access and as easy to fill as we would like it to be? Because certainly we're still having this problem in recruiting, and it's not just Conway's problem. I know it's a national problem, but I think we do need to ensure that our young people, well, people in general, are aware that there are real opportunities in Conway for work, because it is putting pressure on our workforce when there are so many vacancies. So I would like to see, are we confident that is actually occurring?
Well, I can assure Councillor Gromley that we are getting smarter at this in advertising and recruiting, and I will be mentioning this when we look at the draft people strategy, which is later on in the agenda. I don't know whether Fran would like to just come in and add to what I've said.
Yeah, thanks.
Just to reassure Councillor Grom.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Chris. Yeah, absolutely, Councillor Gronwy. I think we have to look at the whole recruitment process, and that's why we've got various work streams looking at the different strands. You're correct that we have tried to simplify the application process. We've piloted that so that depending on the grade and the job role, it is simpler. I think the other area, in fact, I know colleagues behind me were in a meeting earlier, is to look at job descriptions. And what we're trying to unpick is, what do we need for job evaluation, which is really important for equal pay, but what do we need for the actual job descriptions, so that as well as simplifying the application form, we simplify the job descriptions so that there's enough information in order to shortlist and work through with appropriately qualified candidates, but also that we keep that balance, that they don't have to write War and Peace in their application form just to come in for interviews. So that's another area that we're looking at, as well as we've completed advert training now, and we're doing some work to pull together top tips so that we're doing our utmost to distinguish that the advert sells the authority as opposed to the job description that tells about the role. So there's a lot more work to be done there to make sure that recruiting managers have the right skills to do that. So it's an ongoing process and challenge, but we're trying.
Yeah, Fran, that's very comprehensive answer. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll bring the Chief Exec Preen in, please.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank for the report, because I think it's an excellent report, but it also sets out quite a lot. There's been, in the most difficult of years, the achievements that have been made by the council and specifically staff for work. And it just shows the dedication, doesn't it, of staff. Even in these really difficult times, we're able to achieve so much. But I guess looking forward, I think the context of the corporate plan cannot ignore the financial reality of the situation, and the projects that we will have to push forward during the next 12 months will have to be with that in mind. And I guess this sits quite comfortably hand in hand with the midterm financial strategy, which you adopted a few months ago. So that's the context I think we're looking at. But I'd just like to thank for the report, and also, the achievements which have been undertaken during a very, very difficult year.
Couldn't agree more. Councillor Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I think me more than most can say, we've had quite a, I think I called it a hurricane, didn't I, of a financial sort of journey. And to see the achievements from page 147 to 153, as the Chief Executive has just said, LED lights in which is also saving us money, 7,300 dementia support workers, it's all some really good news. And we've had quite a gloomy time of late, and really difficult decisions to be made. And I'm just sort of proud that as the Chief has just said about, our staff are delivering all this and achieving so much in really, really difficult times at the moment. The administration of grants, 1,408 unpaid carers. We've distributed over £700,000 of grants to assist them, and then just under 11,000 winter fuel support grants, totaling 2.2 million to our residents of Conway. We're doing our best. We said we protect vital services. I've just had an audit report from our council tax and valuation department, and the report basically says it's high assurance. Now, you don't get that off auditors often, and they've been doing this whilst administering millions of pounds worth of grants. So my hat goes off to the team. I think they're doing a great job. Very difficult circumstances, and as grants come in, we'll continue to administer to our residents in Conway as best we do. So yeah, absolutely support this report. Excellent report. Thank you.
Councillor Liz, then Councillor Gilly, Councillor Allen.
My query, Frank, was in relation to Gronwy's question, and I was just wondering, what feedback are you getting from the applicants about the actual application form?
We don't have a formal process as such around the applicants. What we do is ask at induction, so those who've been successful, ask them not so much about the application process, but around what attracted them to Conway, just so that we get that sense of what are the key benefits. And it's a lot of it is around flexibility, actually, and the job of making jobs that make a difference. We have looked at can we follow up on applications potentially that were started but then didn't submit, but where there's issues around data protection there. But yeah, that's the most we've followed up really in terms of application forms.
I think it was within social care that one of the social workers said it's a nightmare process negotiating the actual application form. So I was just wondering, if you did ask the applicants, then we'd have a much better idea.
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to feed back to Councillor Gronwy, that I think from the iTrent point of view of the submission and doing it online, we know there are a few niggles which we've been ironing out. But I don't think we can just look at that in isolation, which is why we're looking at the job description and looking at how can we make that process easier without making it harder for the shortlister. So it is looking at how big is your job description? Do you need all that essential criteria? Has it been there for JE, and can we strip any of that out? And also in terms of the application submission, I don't think we challenge enough whether we need it in the application. It could be that you have 15 criteria, but you only want to know about 5 of those in the application because everything else is going to be tested at interview or through a workshop. So it's trying to hone those things in the recruitment process and getting the recruiting manager to understand that I know they're really busy, I know there's capacity issues, but they really need to reflect on that before they put an advert and a job out there. And then when they've got a closing date, how quickly can they turn that around? Because obviously we're in a really competitive market now. So if you leave that for several weeks, because we appreciate people are busy, you may well have lost that potential candidate because they've been applying for several jobs. So it really is looking at the whole recruitment process rather than just one particular area that we're working on.
Thanks very much. But I'd just like to say excellent report, and to think that it is only over 6 months work. It's excellent. Thanks very much. But I'd just like to point out one thing on here, just over equality really in Conway, and it's on page 147, and it's item Number 7, establish a contract with Denbighshire Council for the operation of household waste recycling. Well, for the ones who live near the Gwynedd border, I'd like to see that we could look at doing the same with Gwynedd to assure that the whole of the county then has equal access to going to a different county. Thank you.
Fair point, Grom, we can sort that out. Fair point. Jeff sorted it out. I've got Julie, then Aaron and Jeff.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you for the report and for the hard work that's gone into collate the information. You know, this is a report that I often direct people to, and I think especially new members to have an appreciation of the work that takes place. You know, and with that in mind, I'll touch on a few of the education bits, and I think, you know, that we should be really proud of the fact that all our primary schools are now on the new curriculum, and you touched on it, Chris. That they've been working towards and through a very difficult period with COVID, over half of our secondary schools are on the new curriculum, and the rest of those will join in September. We've had the ALN Act that's taken an awful lot of work, both within schools and with education staff supporting schools to introduce the new ALN Act. Lots of positive things happening. I mean, it does touch on the 21st century schools in here, or as it's now known, sustainable communities for learning, and obviously we touched on that before. As the Chief Exec mentioned, you know, with the financial position that we're in, we've obviously had to stop, reflect and take a look at that. But I guess not wanting to be negative, but and I appreciate it's early in the rollouts of the new plan, so we haven't necessarily got performance measures in as such, but just outcome 4, what I would be concerned about is that, you know, whether that's new members, whether that's the public, would take a look at some of these and think, you know, looking at access to affordable, appropriate housing, everything's absolutely hunky-dory, fantastic. Reading this, you know, it's good, everything's green, and actually that's not the situation we're in. So I don't know how we reflect that in here. The situation is, you know, and we're talking about this being one of our #1 priorities. It doesn't reflect in here. So how we change that, whether that's introduction of performance measures, you know, and this isn't me wanting to be negative. This is me wanting to be realistic, that if we're saying this is a priority, anyone looking at this would think, oh, hang on a minute, that's all green and great, we've got new groups set up. But I think there does need to be some form of performance measure there so that we can look at that, whether that's in 6 months' time or in 12 months' time, to actually reflect that, no, we are really struggling in all sectors, whether that's social housing, private housing, and we're struggling to find accommodation for a very large number of people. So I just would like to propose that we somehow reflect that within the summary of where we're up to here. Thank you, Leader.
I think, to be fair, in the risks we've identified in page 154, the housing is really highlighted in number 4 there. So I think it's right that as things change, that we change our focus to where the problem is, Julie. But perhaps one of the officers wants to comment about how it's reflected in the RAG status and other bits.
Thank you, Councillor Julie. That's really good feedback, actually. And I think what would be useful maybe at the start of the report is to have some sort of, I think we used to include it before, didn't we? Some sort of key to give the RAG rate in the context, because where something has been evaluated as green, it's that it's making progress. I think that would help in terms of just giving the progress some context. In terms of the measures, many of the measures are actually reported on annually, which is why they won't be present in the report. But what we do as part of the 6 monthly performance review is we do, when we receive the progress updates, we do give that internal challenge in terms of progress. But I think going forward, to have some more information to give the RAG rating some context would be helpful, I think. So I'm grateful for your feedback.
Nora Darren.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Diolch Chris ac Amanda am eich gwaith ar yr adroddiad. O'n i jyst eisiau cyffwrdd ar cwpl o bethau yn yr adroddiad. Ddaru Chris gyffwrdd ar aelodaeth ffit. Da ni just cyn dolyg, oedden ni ar 120%, 120% o aelodaeth cyn Covid. A mi oedd hynny cyn y boom, da ni'n cael fel arfer o aelodau sy'n joinio just ar ôl y flwyddyn newydd, New Year, New Me. Felly mae'r aelodaeth lot uwch nag 120% yna o just cyn dolyg. Felly mae'r tîm yn gwneud yn arbennig o dda. A dwi'n meddwl bod yn angen cymryd y cyfle rili i ddiolch i'r tîm i gyd am ei gwaith yn sicrhau bod yr aelodaeth yn parhau gynyddu. Y peth arall yn eisiau godi oedd economi a diwylliant. Gafon ni gyfarfod cwpl o wythnosau nôl yn Fenyw Cymru hefo busnesau lleol. sut ydyn ni fel cyngor yn helpu busnesau yn Nghonwy yn ystod y gaea, sut ydyn ni'n cael pobl i'r ardal. Dwi'n meddwl bod ni dyn ni'n gwneud job yn eitha da, dydan ni'n cael pobl yma yn y ha, ond sut ydyn ni'n cael pobl i ddod dros y gaea hefyd, a dod yma i wario ac cadw busnesau i fynd. Felly, ma' hwnnw'n gyfarfod da iawn, a sut ydyn ni'n defnyddio Fenyw Cymru fel beis i ddod â bobl i'r sir. Ac yn ola, rili neis gweld bod staff a cynghorwyr yn cymryd y cyfle i ddysgu Cymraeg, a swn i'n fodlon iawn i cael ymharu efo cynghorydd neu swyddog i siarad Cymraeg, ond ia, i unrhyw un sy'n dysgu, pob lwc iddyn nhw.
Karen, I think the point you highlighted about our leisure centres is really well made. You know, we've continued to invest in them, and that new sort of equipment and stuff has driven those numbers up, which pays for the actual work. If we don't, you'll have a downward spiral where people will see poor equipment and go elsewhere, and then we will lose those services. So we always have to be careful in difficult situations not to take that knee-jerk reaction, to actually look about driving things forward rather than just letting things spiral down. Councillor Jeff.
Thank you, Leader. I just want to associate with the quality of the report and the content in it, and pass on, my congratulations. As a new member, I'm astonished at what we do as a council. Every day I find something new. I don't think the public actually appreciate just what we do, apart from what has been seen here alone as an achievement. Yes, we hear about the negativity of what goes wrong. My bin wasn't emptied, for a particular reason, but not about the fact that we have 90,000 being done every week. And I think the same thing applies here. And if I have anything to say, it would be that, what can the public do to help us achieve better? And where can that be fitted into the corporate plan? We should be asking them, this is their plan. This is what we're doing for them. And do they see this, and do they read this, and where do they see this, and where do they read this, and where do they actually follow through on this? I go to the community council meeting, and I wouldn't have time to display all of this to them. I have to be selective in what I put out there, but they should be fully aware of what we're actually achieving here. And I think it's a credit to everybody coming out of COVID, hybrid working, and the budget we're working to, and even the shortfall of staff. I think well done, everybody.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Councillor Penny.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'd just like to carry on with all the positive comments and how much the council does and the amount of work that's gone in to give this very reflective report. All I'd like to highlight is the impact of hybrid working, the model of service quality, team culture and staff wellbeing. At the full council, a member said, Coed Pethler's empty. There's no one in there. And Mike held up his plastic glass. I know he has a plastic water bottle now. And he said, this glass is empty. And actually, I've been to Coed Pethler the following days. It's absolutely jam-packed. I couldn't park yesterday. I sat in reception on several different occasions and counted 10 people coming in and out. Everyone's at that workstation. So can we dispel the myth? Coed Pethler certainly is not empty. And if you can find a parking space at 12 o'clock every weekday, then you're really lucky. So let's stop that myth and let's move on. But excellent. Thank you so much for all the hard work in this report.
Okay, members, just want to add my thanks for an excellent report. Sadly, the only parameter we're often judged on is the level of council tax, not the level of service that we provide. But as Mike, you point out, those grants, that is the dichotomy we face, that the people who require our services most are the ones who struggle to pay the council tax, and finding that balance is incredibly difficult. I'm not in any way competitive, but the fact that there's only 8 councils out of 22 who've managed to deliver free school meals for junior schools, and we're one of them, despite giving our many rural schools, that highlights this council is a well-performing council. We knew that was going to be challenging, but I actually never thought for a second we wouldn't achieve it. That we're obviously it'll be difficult, but it's just go ahead and do it. We're not failing in those duties in any way, shape, or form, which is all down to the amazing work you guys put in. So we've had a proposal, Julie. I'm getting confused. Chris, getting carried away with my praise here. Chris.
Yeah, so the recommendations on page 146, and that we approve the report and show that the self-assessment has proved that good progress has been made in delivering our wellbeing objectives.
Okay.
So if I can move that.
Well, I'm going to second that because I can before anybody else said, because I'm very proud too. So if members, can we show for in favour of that, please? Wonderful, thank you. So we'll move on to part 2, which is Strategic Equality Plan Annual Report 21-22 and Employment Monitoring Report 21-22. You'll find that on pages 118 to 308, and that's back with you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah, so as I mentioned at full council the week before last, is it? These 2 annual reports are compiled and presented to comply with our statutory duties, in this case under the Statutory Duty Wales regulations of 2011. So I think we can be proud that Wales as a nation takes social justice issues very seriously, and our local authority does thorough work to achieve our equality objectives. I want to thank Tracy and Josh, who are sitting in the corner again, I point them out, for compiling all this huge amount of data which is in front of us this afternoon. Includes recruitment outcomes, training, disciplinary and grievances cases, leavers statistics, plus the important breakdown by the protected characteristic. So this is the second year of reporting for our present 4-year strategic equality plan. We're working towards a new one which will start. A lot of good work is planned, and our 7 objectives are top level and far reaching. If I can just mention that 117 actions have been completed successfully, but in the present climate and with staff capacity, we know that some of these have to be deferred in some way or the other. Further actions will follow as we have updated census data, and these will include the recently released Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan, which I've already mentioned, and the developing LGBTQ+ Welsh Government Action Plan. I would also like to recommend that elected members read the Locked Out: Liberating Disabled People's Lives and Rights in Wales Beyond COVID-19. That is a really thorough report, and we will take on board the actions identified by the Disability Rights Task Force. Turning to the Employment Monitoring Report, there's a tremendous amount of information there. There is no doubt that hybrid working is making some jobs more accessible, which is good. Equality monitoring data for staff in Conwy is improving, but a lot depends on staff actually providing the information. Applicants for employment and promotion and the shortlisting and appointment data show information on keeping the balance between growing our own talent and internal career progression. And I think we've got important examples of both of those in recent appointments, because we still want to bring in new talent and external personnel. We continue to employ marginally more part-time staff than full-time in permanent and fixed roles. We actually employ 1,910 people in casual posts. The data for the recruitment of Black, minority, ethnic and disabled people in 2006-2022 shows higher numbers, even though the total percentage remains similar. But I think that's important. Don't always look at the percentage, but actually look at the numbers. The summary of job applicants by protected characteristics is on page 256, and that includes the analysis of shortlisting and appointments. I don't think there are any surprising conclusions there. The grievance and disciplinary action cases are low for the amount of staff we have. Those based on sickness absence totaled 155. The analysis based on our profile doesn't give any surprises, but we all know the level of absence is a concern, I can assure fellow cabinet members that our absent management policy is tight with all the HSE processes you would expect from such a large organisation and major employer locally. There were significantly more voluntary leavers this year than in previous years. Total leaver numbers are up to 532 from 332. Again, I don't think any surprise, leader, in that jump. We have deleted 40 vacant posts due to budget cuts. They're in the background, as we know. 3.2.19 lists our proposed actions. Many services have continued to face disruptions and shifting priorities due to the effect of the pandemic. The report covers 2021-2022, so the latest impacts of the cost of living crisis, etc., not part of this data. That will be coming forward in due course. So the recommendation is at 2.2 on a page 189, which is that Cabinet, that we approve the Strategic Equality Plan Annual Report 2021-2022 and the Employment Monitoring Report for the same period, so that we can publish these on the Council's intranet and internet sites to fulfil the requirements of the UK and Wales equality legislation. This has to be done by the 31st of March, so I'd be grateful if we could approve that today, Leader. Thank you.
I'll have to see what the cabinet thinks, Chris, but yeah, thank you for taking us through a very complex report and taking us through all the details. Any cabinet members like to comment, please? Councillor Liz.
Thank you very much. I think this is an excellent report and I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. As somebody who likes reading research, I think it's a paper that you can go to whenever you need to know figures. You've got them there at your fingertips. So I'm really pleased, and I'm more than happy to second the report, please.
Okay. Any other comments?
Just quickly, I think with the census data, I mentioned in the budget the other week that the data in here, if you want to put a figure on it, it's cost Conway £1.373 million. So we lost some money, and next year is going to be another 700 and odd £1,000. And I think you see, really, if you look at the percentage of population, so like 15 years and under, we're sort of down 0.6%. And so our population, and then 16 to 64 years old, we're down 2.4%, and yet 65 and over, the population's gone up 2.9%. So, and I know you're taking that up. Well, it's worth saying, sort of nationally, about the distribution of the grant, etc. We get more money from government for our young people than we do for our elderly people. So obviously, when you see trends that we're growing older population, it's great. It's great that we're growing older, isn't it? But it doesn't attract the funding that we need to assist our elderly population.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Any other questions, members? I'm firmly in the Liz camp. I love a bit of data and a bit of research and going through it. Yeah, no, it's really good, and it's absolutely right that we are open and transparent, and we follow the legislation, and we are a fair employer of choice. So it's great to see the detail there. I'm happy to second the proposal. I'm not sure if you had a seconder yet. Liz, sorry, Liz. Yeah, so we got a proposal and a seconder. Members, can we show we're in favour of accepting it? Wonderful, thank you. So we'll move on to part 3, which is honoraria policy. That's in pages 309 to 331, and that's with you again, Chris, please.
Okay, thank you, Leader. This is all about short-term cover, and we want a policy that provides a completely transparent process. So we have a well-established job evaluation process which ensures employees receive fair payment for the work they're undertake, but on occasion, employees may be asked to undertake additional duties. So if we have a look at honorariums? Because I know sometimes people get a bit confused between what's an acting up arrangement and what's an honorarium. So the examples of honorariums which we pay for is a one-off finance piece of work or project which is outside the normal scope and grade of employees' duties, or temporarily carrying out the duties normally carried out by an officer on a higher grade, and taking on additional duties outside the normal scope and grade pending a formal reallocation of work or a restructure to cover delays in recruitment. And we've already discussed the challenges that we have with recruitment. Acting up, on the other hand, those arrangements allow for manual operational staff to stand in for absent staff on a higher grade immediately, so that they can undertake the full duties of the role in order to protect service continuity. Honoraria don't apply for covering leave or for any additional responsibilities for a period less than 4 weeks. Honoraria payments are non-contractual payments made to employees on the basis that they are actively undertaking additional duties. Where an employee who is receiving an honorarium is absent from work for more than 4 weeks due to sickness absence or other absence, except annual leave, the manager should review the payment in liaison with their HRBB. So the people and performance team accept reports from heads of service so that they can have an oversight, and equal opportunities issues are given proper consideration. So I just want to make that point as well. The recommendation is at section 2 of the report, and basically it is that Cabinet approve the honoraria and acting up policy, and I'd like to propose that we accept that, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Any comments, members? Councillor Emily and then Councillor Jeff.
Thank you for this, Councillor Chris. It's really good to have a policy and it all in one document to see where it is. I suppose my question is, how is this going to be rolled out to heads of service? Because from reading some of this, there's lots of staff throughout the council that act up, that we use the words acting up, but actually when you read this, they might actually be under honoraria depending on circumstances. So how are we going to make sure that there's kind of an equal level across the whole thing and this is actually implemented?
Thank you. Very good question, Councillor Emily. First, just to clarify that the honoraria arrangement has been in place for many, many years. This is just about tightening up and clarifying an existing policy. In terms of the rollout, therefore, it is already in place. It's been ongoing for many years. The requirement of honoraria and acting up is that the manager requests it, and I think that's the key difference. And it is a balance, isn't it? Because there are plenty of members of staff who will, through goodwill, take on additional tasks as part of their own personal developments and building their own portfolio. But that's the key criteria in terms of honoraria and acting up, is that it's initiated by the line manager requesting that this additional responsibility is taken on. And we also need to make that very clear that it is about additional responsibility. It's not about more work. So from that process, it's initiated by the manager. And as Councillor Chris said, we issue monthly reports now so that there is oversight within each service as to who has an honoraria, and most importantly, when they're coming to an end, so that we make sure either that head of service reflects as to does it need extending for a short period of time, or that the member of staff is told in a timely manner and that they can manage their budget, that additional payment is coming to an end.
Okay, Emily. Jeff?
Yeah, my question regarding short term, what exactly is short term? And is it renewed after that particular term? Or can it be renewed again? And when do we actually stop that being renewed? What is the case?
Well, in terms of honoraria, short term is anything over 4 weeks. Otherwise, you know, any time people went on leave, you know, we'd have requirements for acting up. So that's the criteria for honoraria. In terms of acting up, which is a different arrangement, that can be day to day, and it may just be an odd day here, an odd day there. You're quite right that honoraria needs to come to an end. And we've built that into the policy. So they get those monthly reports to heads of service. They're aware of how long an honoraria is going on. Ideally, it shouldn't be more than 12 months. But we do know there are circumstances where they've gone on considerably longer than that. And that's what we're working to bring to a close. So it's written within the policy that if it's clear that the original temporary additional responsibility looks like it's not going to end, then that should go through JE so that the post can be appropriately evaluated. If it is still fixed term, but we know it needs to be a bit longer, there is an escalation process that after 2 years it will then go to SLT so that they have that oversight of longer term honoraria. And we've also tightened up correspondence to staff, so it's very clear to them that this is non-contractual and that they bear in mind that that additional payment will come to an end.
Another question then. When it's introduced in the first instance, do we indicate whether it's 6 weeks, 8 months, 6 months or a year? We do.
Yes, that's part of the letter that the member of staff has, which explains that it's temporary, non-contractual, and this is how long it will go on for.
Hey, Councillor Penny.
Thanks, Leader. Thanks, Fran, for the report. How much do honoraria cost the council on a 12-month basis, roughly? And data protection, how transparent is it the individuals getting it? And how is that whole situation managed within a staff working team? Thank you.
Oh gosh, lots of questions, my memory. I can't give you a figure as such as to how much it's costing us, because clearly it's not a forward work programme. I can't tell you how many honoraria are going to come up in the next 12 months. What I can tell you is that it is a cost efficiency in many respects, particularly where we have honoraria that are covering vacant posts whilst we reconsider. We've got examples where that's happening, where mini restructures are going on, and certainly for service continuity, it can be really helpful rather than going out for agency, for example. So I can't give you a figure. I've forgotten the other questions, sorry.
I've forgotten it as well, but I'll ask another one. Just to show willing, really.
It's whether it's how transparent is it that they have the honoraria.
I won't ask the other question.
Yeah, I should have written it down. Yeah, thanks, Councillor Julie. I'm sure you sympathise. Yeah, it's transparent in that it goes through due process, and every head of service has a list of their honoraria. As you know, we don't publish individual salaries in that respect, other than the pay policy, which gives the grading structure. But what I can assure you in terms of transparency is that we have reiterated in the policy that particularly where there is more than one member of staff that could be eligible for that honoraria, that they go through a due process of expressions of interest, so that it's not just, you know, picking out one member of staff, they all get the opportunity. So it is transparent in that it's all logged with senior management team so that they know, and there is a due process in terms of approval as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll just bring Green in, and then Mike would like to comment.
Just quickly, I think in terms of transparency, I think the most important thing here is that consistency and transparency. So the policy shows up a whole system so that everyone knows, from the employee and employer, what the relationship is. And I think that is essential, because that's where things break down, is where there's uncertainty around process or especially when it comes to employment and so on. It needs to be clear and transparent. So I think this is an excellent piece of work and puts us in a really better place in terms of that process. We have checks and balances, we have approval processes that escalate. And I think with any HR policy, that is really the cornerstone of what you're looking for. So I'm really confident. And in terms of it's been through SMT, the heads of service are aware of it. It's been improved, and it will go down the whole staffing system now in order to make sure that we have a consistent approach to honoraria. And I think that's a really big step forward for us.
Yeah, I agree. Mike.
I'd like you to let me go first before Ryan next time, because I've got consistency, transparency. I've also got career progression and experience on it. I think paragraph 9.4 says exactly what it does on the tin, and the letters for consistency and transparency in Appendix B say it all. I think it's a really good policy document that's clearing up, or will help to clear up. I'll just say perhaps a loose area in the past. So next time, leader, if I could go before the chief, because it just sounds like I'm just parroting what he says.
You'll have to show me your scripts before we begin, those gentlemen, so I can decide each order. Yeah, no, I agree. It's a really good piece of work. I think key for me is 3.5 talks about it's covering unexpected or short-term absences. There are other tools in the box under secondment, as well as actually going through proper promotion. But it does give it a breathing space in those urgent situations. It can help us with the budget, deciding whether we need to replace a position. So, but to have clarity about the length and duration, how it's administered, I think is really useful. So, Chris, you proposed it.
Yeah, that we adopt it.
Yeah, can I second that we adopt it? Sorry, I'm abusing my position up here. Can members show if they're in favour, please? Wonderful, thank you. So we'll move on to the last report, which is draft people strategy 22 to 27 and strategy summary. Some pages 332 to 375. Chris.
Thank you. Well, I'm really glad this has come today, because it just sort of encompasses everything, really. A lot of the points we've talked about already. So it presents a 5-year draft strategy with the objective to deliver, but we won't be able to deliver on everything. So a lot of it is exploration as well, because we know that a skilled workforce is vital to Conwy. It's vital to achieve our corporate plan objectives. And we need that crucial Team Conwy culture. It's our vital resource as we try and deliver. So of our nearly 5,000 members of staff, interestingly, and Jenny's here, social care and education makes up more than 70% of the workforce. It's a big figure, isn't it? Key priorities are set out in the report, and I think they're done in a very logical way, because they categorize the themes that encompass the staff journey. So if we have a look at the summary on 369, that sets out in a nutshell. 9. There we go, multicolored as well. First of all, joining, we've already discussed how we're making our advertising and recruitment initiatives more professional. A lot of combined working has gone on with marketing, and indeed we do aspire to give a warm welcome. We go to learning. There is an infographic on the Conwy Conversation on page 353, and this is our new performance development framework. Working, we encourage and value staff feedback. We engage with and listen to the trade unions. We encourage a healthy work-life balance. I've already talked about inclusiveness and safety. So that's all encompassed in that area. Then we've got reward that comprises our job evaluation work. and that is being updated this year and is a big priority for 2023. And then we've got leaving, because that's got to cover exit interviews and so on. So running through all of this is the values we aspire to and the expected behaviour we want from everyone working for Conwy, and really the culture that embeds fairness and respect for diversity, but also values challenge, I would say. And that's challenge both internal and external, and values innovation. We're a bilingual authority, so we've got to mention that we want to develop Welsh language skills. That's taken very seriously. As I set out in full council in the pay policy statement, pay is negotiated by national committees, and the pay and grading of jobs must be fair by law and non-discriminatory, and comply fully with the equal pay legislation. As well as developing staff, we have the learning and development plan is important in supporting recruitment and retention. Hopefully that period, much talked about, the Great Resignation, is behind us. We do want to explore more apprenticeship and graduate schemes. I know that the Chief Exec wants to develop those as soon as we possibly can. And we don't want to forget the less formal peer-to-peer training that goes on all the time. So as those members who've been to the recent service performance reviews will know, hybrid working needs some fundamental adjustments, and looking to my left again, the critical financial situation has to be tackled. So the section on how we will measure progress starts on page 365. That's quite a long section, but is important because we want to ensure that we are making progress. So in conclusion, we have already initiated a lot of this strategy, but some objectives will be subject to staff capacity and budget constraints. An annual review is built in, and we want this actually, the whole strategy, to be a living document, allowing for flexibility as we go forward. And of course, it must interlink with the corporate plan. The vital outcome for this is that Conwy is a resilient, well-run organisation and a good employer. So the recommendation to approve and adopt is on page 333 at 2.2, and I propose that, Leader.
Councillor Gromwell and Councillor Julie. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Chris, for this excellent report. Just going back to the point of Team Conwy, I think to a degree we have lost part of that due to the lockdown period with COVID. And I think it's all important that we do re-engage with our staff. Hybrid working certainly doesn't encourage that. I don't know how many members recall, some years ago, we used to have a staff workshops where we met on specific themes with members. We used to meet in the venue, and those were very productive meetings where we chose a specific couple of subjects, and working with our staff, we were able to sit around the table and share ideas. And those I found were very, I don't know, probably before you joined, Leader, but certainly I valued those workshops immensely, because we met staff from all different departments, which and they met us, and it was an extremely beneficial process, engaging with our staff. And I think the staff valued it as well, in having opportunities to share their views, because there's so much hidden talent in our staff that are working away, and that opportunity gave them to look at different service delivery methods. And I think it was an excellent process. I know if it's worthy of reconsidering that as we seek to strengthen Team Conwy again.
That's very interesting, Gromwell. Sure, something we can look at. Fran, Julia.
Yes, it was called Improving Conwy. Yeah. And just for newer members, it was an annual process that we did, where we would pick key themes for improvement and invite elected members, and any member of staff across the authority could put their name forward. And we used to do it over a couple of months, and then over capacity, it got got squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. It was getting harder and harder to enable staff to give up the time to attend the meetings. And I think just before COVID, we decided to take a break, so to speak, just because we weren't getting, I think, members or staff had the time to do it. But it's certainly something that we could look at again. But yeah, they were hazy, happy days, weren't they, Gronwy?
Back in the day. Julie.
Thank you, Leader. It's quite funny that you should say that, Gronwy, because I mentioned it to Jenny yesterday, and I'm sure I mentioned it in the staff forum as well. I found Improving Conway really helpful, and it used to be linked to one of the themes typically of the corporate plan, didn't it? And you know, I took part in a few of them, and it was great because there was such a mix of people from across the authority, all at levels. And yeah, it was fascinating. And then, as you said, we would meet a few times and then we'd sort of bring it back for an update as to some of those that we'd moved forward with, you know. And I think it's not a bad idea if we can find the time to do it in some way. It's just, again, it's down to money, isn't it, and releasing staff. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on, you know, and I think it's great, and I'd love to go back to that Team Conway, and I definitely feel that COVID's definitely impacted that, because we could really feel that in the past, and you know, it's hard now how you can relate that across the screen. But I wanted to touch on apprenticeships, and it's really good to hear that that's one of your priorities as well, to look at perhaps degree level apprenticeships or some form of degree level provision moving forward. I had a discussion with Jenny yesterday. We're actually have some fantastic work going on, certainly in social care and education. We've seen staff progress through to become social workers, and I know we've had really positive results in education as well with educational psychologists. But the apprenticeship levy was rolled out some years ago, and initially when that came forward, I thought that would help us to increase the number of apprenticeships that we have within the local authority. And then I learned that that won't help for sort of entry level apprenticeships, if you like, but actually we could access funding for degree level apprenticeships as part of the apprenticeship levy. I'm just curious to see whether that's actually happening, because I don't believe that's what funded what's happened in social care and education. I said to Jenny I'd look into it further, because we might be missing an opportunity, and I think that probably was funded externally, perhaps from something, but I just don't want us to miss that opportunity around that pot that's available, because when we talk about staff retention, obviously that has been an issue, and I think knowing that we will help to fund, or we'll access funding so that they can progress, you know, it's really powerful, isn't it? And it's a good way of retaining staff, knowing that that opportunity will be there going forward. So I think we need to take every opportunity to move with that. And then in terms of schools and young people, I think that message of just the typical, when you're staying on to do your A levels, that you automatically progress to university, I think those days are shifting and moving. And I think people who are very successful academically actually are looking for the opportunity to come in and do their degree within some kind of whether that's local authority, local government, or whether that's some of the commercial businesses that are out there. You know, it makes a lot of sense. You don't have the debt, you have funding whilst you do that. So I'd love for us to get more involved in that. And if the apprenticeship levy can help support that, I think we need to look into that opportunity. I can't remember the name of the lady that used to do it in HR that left. She used to have responsibility. Carol, that's it.
Cheryl now.
Yeah, so I think it would be good to take those opportunities. But again, another fantastic report about supporting our staff. So thanks, Leader.
Frain, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think showing that pathway is really important. I think maybe people aren't aware, maybe as they should be, around the opportunities that local government can give. And we will turn every stone to try and find a way of making this work for us, even in these very difficult times. Actually, in these difficult times, it makes even more sense to be doing this. And we'll work with partners as well, in terms of any opportunity out there. In every facet of the work we do, we will look at that, be that straight from school, apprenticeships, graduate schemes, whatever it is. Because one thing we all know is, and what the previous reports have shown is, that there's so many varied things that we do, and all of them have a specific pathway for different people. And I think it's really important. So you can take it as an assurance, both Fran and me and Cheryl have been working quite hard around trying to find options for us with this. And we'll certainly be continuing to do that certainly over the next few months and over the next 12 months, certainly.
Okay, I think we've got Councillor Cheryl online, and then Liz, and then Aaron. Cheryl, are you with us?
I am indeed. Thanks, Leader. Yes, just a quickie, just to reinforce what I was discussing in Finance and Resources about apprenticeships in terms of our children coming out of care. Terribly important, and that should be a priority for us all as corporate parents. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Cheryl. Councillor Liz.
Yes, just in addition to what's been said about apprenticeships, I think we do need to pursue that. I mean, I believe Airbus was oversubscribed with apprentices this year, so we need to emulate what they're trying to achieve, really. Mike, thank you very much indeed, Fran, another excellent report. But I think that in 1.3, I think the pivotal part of this document and this strategy, it says, whilst HR colleagues play a pivotal professional role, the successful delivery of the strategy will require ownership and support from all staff. So I think, as Chris says, if this is going to be a live and living document, we've got to be working along with staff all the way. So I think I'd like to agree that taking the improving Conwy suggestion forward, that we should look to do that working with staff. Thank you.
Okay, Aaron.
Diolch. Just on a point Gronwy and Julie made, on page 361, point 12, it talks about the staff suggestions scheme on the website. Do we still make use of this?
Yes, although I don't get many submissions, to be fair. And I think we need to take it in a suite of different ways of engaging the staff. So I wonder whether it's slightly it's there on every staff newsletter at the end. So I wonder if it's one of those things where you see it so often you don't see it anymore. But I can assure you when we do get suggestions in, I personally respond to them and make sure that member of staff knows we've looked at it. Either we implement it or we explain why we can't, but there's not many. But as I said, in terms of that suite of arrangements, I think we have to remember that I'd worry if the only way a member of staff felt they could make a suggestion was through an online form. It should come through staff engagement within services. That's certainly something we ask in every SPR. What have you learned? What have you taught to your staff? What have they fed back? Trade unions, we have a very healthy debate, don't we, with trade unions? Really enjoy those meetings. That's another avenue. And then we're in the process at the moment of starting the work on ideas that we'll put forward to Hryn around a new all staff survey, because obviously we've done a lot of work during the lockdown with hybrid and gaining staff views on that, but it will be timely to look at a whole staff survey as well.
Going back, Aaron.
Yeah, no, diolch, Fran. I appreciate we don't want staff to think that only this online form that they can use to offer up suggestions. But I'm just wondering now that we're going to be entering into a new financial year, if it's worth just doing a push again, because I know sometimes staff do have ideas, and it's just because they happen to have the ear of a councillor that they've managed to progress that idea. Well, really they should be having more opportunities to offer up suggestions because they're the ones who know the service.
Yeah, and I think our new Conwy conversation will help that. I think about having that conversation with staff from a managerial point of view, engaging in a conversation which should flush out ideas. Actually, it should be a safe space to have that debate and conversation around, you know, how is that individual service doing? Are there better ways of doing things? Is there any, you know, innovative ways we can work? So I guess that will be a real priority for us going forward. But you're right, I think it would make sense to have a push early on in the new financial year now, so that we can you know, assess these things and move things forward if we can.
Karen, Mike.
Following Ryan again. It's not about the common conversation. Mine's a little bit off field, off piste, if you like, because agency staff, we employ agency staff, and I just wonder, do we have a conversation with them saying, look, are you happy working with the agency, or, you know, would you want to come and work? And I know there's going to be a process to go through, and rightly so, but I just wonder that, you know, that you can say we've got X amount of agency staff, and why aren't they working for us? Why are they working for the agency instead of working for Conway when we've got this people strategy in front of us? And in a previous role outside in the workplace, I created my own bank staff, which actually saved a lot of money. Instead of going through the agency, I had my own bank staff that I could call upon. But I'm just wondering if anything's been done regarding that.
Yeah, agency is an area we are looking at the moment, both in terms of well, it'll be coming through to cabinet soon in terms of retendering. Yes, not all agency. Most agency is about backfilling posts that we've been unable to recruit to. But I should add some is that it's so short term. What's required that there's no point recruiting, just to give that context. There aren't many of those, but yes, certainly we do have a track record in some areas where we've had an agency role and then it's gone out to adverts, and the agency person has applied for it. We don't have a formal process as such where we target the agency staff to say, why won't you work for us, other than obviously we have an open recruitment process that is there for them to apply for.
I won't say who, but someone close to me worked for an agency recently, and certainly didn't get the opportunity to reflect and say thank you once leaving and going forward to another area of work. So I just feel I'd welcome a piece of work around agency work and us going forward, and I'm sure there's cost savings to be out there as well.
I think it's a very valuable point, isn't it, Fran? We talked about, we were interviewing people about being really friendly to the people who didn't get the job, or being nice, so they came away from Conway thinking that that's a good organisation, a good place to be. So I think you're absolutely right in terms of that. You know, thank you for working, whether it was for a day or a week or a month. I think it is important moving forward, isn't it? Gromwy.
I know we struggle to find certain types of skills at seasonal times of the year. I use an example for road sweeping and gully emptying. Now, I'm aware that there are a number of people out there, contracted or even workers with particular skills that don't want full-time employment, but they would be available to look at seasonal work. So I think this is something we could explore, I think, with it works well with the gritting, where agricultural contractors come in at times when we need gritting or hedge cutting. I think we could perhaps expand on that for these type of seasonal contracts, or a bank of people that we can call upon for that type of operation. I think it would be worth exploring.
Okay, thanks, Gromwy. Chris, did you want to come back in?
Yeah. Say in our forward work programme that we're going to be having the agency worker framework coming forward, and that looks as if it'll be short, because I know I've done the comment for it for Donna, so it won't be long before it comes to cabinet. Yeah.
Okay, members, all happy? So yeah, thanks for an excellent piece of work. I think any organisation knows that its staff are the key asset, and keeping those staff happy, creating an environment where they can thrive and where they feel valued is really key. I think we are very unusual in that you've got this sort of member officer, all hopefully on the same side, but I think in the difficult times we're in, it's beholden the members to recognise that difference and recognise the challenges that you guys face. I think we have to challenge, that's our role, but you can always challenge in a polite and respectful way, and kind of both parties knowing where that comes from. I think that an awful lot for doing your job with a smile on your face, what that means to people around you is really, really important, isn't it? In difficult, challenging times, that we can all lift each other, and conversely, we can all bring each other down. So that sort of environment is really important. And that saying thank you at the end of the day for people's work is really important. So it's enough from me. Chris, do you want to go over the recommendation again on page 333?
I want Cabinet to adopt the draft people strategy and the strategic summary, please. Thank you.
Okay, would anybody like to second that? Councillor Aaron, members, can we sure we're in favour? Okay, that concludes the meeting. In line with us just said, thank you all ever so much for all your hard work on this, members and officers. It is much appreciated. Diolch o galon i chi gyd.